Hello and welcome to Revenue Unscripted. Today, Marco Terruzzin joins me from Energy Vault, where he serves as Chief Revenue Officer and leads the company's global revenue engine. With deep experience building commercial strategy in clean energy, including years working internationally across markets, Marco brings a sharp executive lens on what really drives growth. Today, we'll talk about how to create strong value propositions that salespeople can actually use and how to keep them from becoming obsolete as the competitive landscape shifts. So I am particularly excited to dive into this one today. Marco, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us here today on Revenue Unscripted.
Jennica, thank you for having me. I'm excited too when we talk about growth and using new technology to make the process more productive and exciting.
Awesome. Oh, well, before we get into the heavy strategy, could you please give listeners a quick snapshot of what you're working on today and who you serve?
So I'm the Chief Revenues Officer of a publicly listed company on the New York Stock Exchange, Energy Vault. Energy Vault is an independent power producer, is a company that builds, owns, and operates critical energy infrastructure. We build energy storage solutions for utilities. So we're talking about a project in the range of $200-300 million generation asset, and they are even more expensive. And recently, 18 months ago, we started to look also in the implementation of AI infrastructure. So energy asset that they have to be ready for neo cloud company like Navius, CoreWeave, just to mention some of the names that are very well known in the industry, Crusoe Cloud, and they need asset that they have a high quality of power, readily available to install GPUs and provide a service to companies like Oracle and OpenAI. So it's an industry that is moving quite quickly.
Yes, it is. There's a lot going on over there. And I'm very excited to pick your brain around value because when we were talking earlier, you talked about the really important thing when you're growing revenue is to have a clear, clean value prop. And I just know from experience in the way that we've worked in Slattery Sales Group, that can be a surprisingly challenging thing. And executives often think like we've got this nailed down, but we don't. And so right before I pick your brain on the value prop angle of things, I really want to talk for a moment about your growth because I know that within the next 24 months, you've got some really ambitious growth on the table. I remember you talking about that when we were chatting earlier. You're looking at growth in revenue and growth in EBITDA over the next 24 months. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how do you change how you talk about value at that scale? So kind of at a 30,000 foot view, what needs to change as you think about your value in that kind of ambitious growth?
Yeah. Uh, for sure, positioning the company in the right industry and in the right segment helps any form of growth. If you're in an industry that is stagnant, it's obvious that talking about growth is the difficult by design. Even if you position yourself in an industry that is growing, but you are not a customer, you can be in the corner and relegated to a role that is minor in that industry. And for sure, you're harvesting the highest possible profit that your company can realize. Differently, if you position the company at the intersection between the growth and also the highest value for a customer, at that point, the magic happens. Because you are able to, for example, attract the best talent in the industry because it's easy to spread the voice that your company is growing, is doing something that is pretty cool. And from a marketing perspective, the supply chain and other customer, they created this virtuous cycle that create the magic and the growth step by step, and I would say even more rapidly that you can expect materialize. And this is what happened also to ourselves, going from a technological company focused on a specific solution for a long duration energy storage to a company that understood that focusing only and exclusively to one solution was attractive, but it was in a certain way also limiting our growth. And with what happened in the last 24 months, in particular in the United States, with the massive demand of power from the AI factories, this large load. When we talk about a 1 gigawatt of a data center, 1 gigawatt is the power that the city of Seattle consumes every day.
Wow.
Simultaneously, they are pulling 1 gigawatt of power. So We are talking about a massive deployment of equipment and utilization of power. And this is reshaping the balance and the equilibrium in the grid, particularly in Texas. This is happening. And with this, we realized that it was very important to provide not only energy storage solution, but also generation and AI infrastructure ready to go. And that has generated a lot of interesting feedback, entering in this space that allow us to learn more and be even more effective with our value.
Wow. There is a lot happening in your industry, as we said a few minutes ago, and you guys are tracking very, very closely with that. That's awesome. Um, y- you made some incredible. There were so many gems in what you said right there. So my brain is going in a bunch of different directions with where I want to take this. Um, but you have talked before about, yeah, let me take it back to value props, because I'm gonna come back to what you said there in a minute. But first, I know that crafting a strong value proposition is incredibly important, especially when humans are part of your go-to-market strategy. When you have human sales professionals out in the marketplace having conversations with prospective clients, talking to them. Perhaps they are up against competitors who are saying, we do exactly the same thing, only cheaper or better or faster. And prospects can't necessarily tell on their own what makes you different or better and why that has any value for them. Could you kind of walk us through what makes a strong value proposition for a revenue team?
I would say that being brutally honest is a good thing.
Ooh, hoo, hoo.
Of
Tell me more.
not only listening to customer, but think as you were a customer can only give you insights that ultimately they may undermine very often or confirm your thesis, your hypothesis. Oh, there are numerous examples that starting from a solution and looking for a customer was successful. Uh, the Google of the world, that was the process. There are many other examples that led to a failure, trying to push a solution that was not really solving any problem, but
Yes,
nobody wanted that solution to solve their own problems.
we have seen that before.
I would say that for a commercial team that by design has not is designed to listen to customer, not really to play with technology. And within an organization, you have a both side. But the best service that a commercial team can do to his organization is to stay as close as possible to the customer, the market, and the evolution, even the regulatory evolution that in a regulated market like the power sector is influencing upstream and very early in the process how ultimately the demand and the contract will take shape. So I would say, to answer your question in summary, that avoiding a very frank and honest comparison with the market condition and uh, what customer are willing to pay and use their money for, avoiding that test is very dangerous. Differently, differently, if you are very close to the market and you are willing to test your beliefs, your initial assumption, or what you found in an organization that you joined recently and they have a set of products, a solution that eventually you don't want to argue with, but having a little bit of tendency to be critical, positively critical, I think it helps to avoid to enter a situation where you can have some blind spot.
Oh my goodness. There's so much truth there, and as you're talking, I'm thinking back to situations that we have seen where that went down, and the product was amazing, and as time went on and developments came around, if the company didn't listen to the customer, they would develop things that weren't necessarily of value to the marketplace today. Maybe they had been of value, 5 years ago, but they were very proud of those technological advancements and they were excited about them. They're rolling them out, they're developing them, and it wasn't necessarily relevant. And I let's I'm going to use an example from consumer technology, because they haven't been a client. I don't want to share any client secrets here, but in consumer technology, for example, I'm thinking of something very simple: cameras, right? Cameras are getting more and more high def all the time. And the engineers are so excited for that. They're so excited. And unfortunately, when you upgrade to more and more high def, high def, high def, the person who actually doesn't want that is the person in the picture. And I know of a school where school pictures went very badly one year, very recently, because the cameras that the photographer had brought in, they had upgraded their cameras and they were super excited about high def. High def is not what the ultimate customer wants when they're getting photographed as teenagers. We do not want to see every pore. We don't want to see if you're on Zoom and you're over 40. I don't care, Zoom, if you have high def. I don't want it. My vanity is at stake. And so it's the little things. And that's just an example from, very simple consumer technology. We're very proud to roll out things where we think they're going to be of value. But unless we're actually on the ground with the customer and listening to them, we may not assume correctly about what is of value to them, because things change. And I'd love to ask you, one of the things that we've observed at Slattery is, after we do the hard work of determining what is your real value, like what are you really bringing to the marketplace, and we work with the executive team and we dig into it, and it's a wonderful session. Usually it's not always easy. When we're done with that work, the CEO often wants to take what we've just done, put the value prop in the lobby behind plexiglass for the next 10 years. But we tell them not to do that. Can you, and you've talked about that when we were chatting earlier, can you talk about why it is so important to be refreshing that value proposition constantly, and what might be some mines in the minefield that leaders might need to watch for if they don't?
Yeah, it's the discussion around the velocity at which and the frequency at which you are touching some foundational assumption in the company, and the value proposition is one of them. It's delicate, and it can have, let's say, how frequently, how often, with which degree of intensity are you touching the mission of the company? Are you touching the value proposition? It depends on a few parameters. If it's a startup that has not yet reached revenues, that can happen even on a monthly basis, until depends on also on the dynamic, the characteristic of the team. And if they're a software startup or focused on hardware, so there are some limiting factor, to be so agile. But let's say that a company, just use an example, a company that has established its positioning and want to scale up, right? So has already reached a certain level of confirmation that its product are reasonable for a customer,
Okay.
reasonable market.
It's a good
But
word.
yeah, a company that is exposed to market fluctuation, changing in a regulatory environment, changing in even regulatory environment looks like a theoretical word, but I look at what happened with tariffs, right?
Right. Right.
Okay, something that is affecting multiple business, almost every business. Or the the revision of the value proposition of, I think that is something that must be part of every company at least every 2 or 3 years. Even if the answer ultimately, and I'm trying to define and find some boundaries in this discussion, okay, because it depends on the stage of the organization. But
Sure.
even if ultimately you are confirming that the value proposition makes sense because those are the customer, those are the solutions that make sense for the problem that a company has to solve. And the reason why the customer is picking this organization, these companies instead of another are clear, is good in my opinion. I would say that it's important that at least every 2 years there is a critical review of the value proposition. Because as a minimum result, you can improve the go-to-market. You don't change the value proposition, but you can find a new market niche. you can find eventually adjacent customers that you were not considering before, or a solution that can be improved or scaled down, saving money in the product and in the solution that ultimately has an impact on the profitability of the company.
Ooh, so just checking in, even if the value prop itself doesn't change, checking in and making sure that you are optimizing your capture of it in the marketplace that's beautiful. I love that. Um, I have to ask then, where do you see companies go wrong? And what I really mean by that is, what do they confuse with a value proposition?
Um, you have a lot of good questions, right? Yeah. And I'm trying to find a balance between being too generic and providing some example of
I know what you mean.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, uh, it's you have you need two boundaries, right? Okay. You cannot modify the value proposition too often. Okay, to be too critical, because at that point, uh, the people working in an organization, the team, can accept and can manage a limited number of changes.
Oh, that's so true.
Right. They say that on the right side, you need to force to not to change too often, not to be overcritical of what you are doing, because sales cycle may take some time,
They do.
and and we cannot give up to initiatives, a sales channel, a target market, just because for the first couple of months something doesn't happen. Sometimes sales cycle, the sales force, the business development people, they have to insist. Okay. On the other side, uh, being stubborn, and this happens quite often with tech startups, okay, or startups that are the result of intuitions, okay. They may get stuck for too long of a period of time with an assumption. The, the real problem is that there are thousands of books, thousands of podcasts talking about uh, the risk of being falling in love with your solution. But I think that the most dangerous thing is not recognizing that that is happening.
Hoo, hoo, hoo.
And there are dozens of reasons to believe that you have to be persistent, and because there are many books talking about a persistency as a ultimate way to success. And,
Right.
and there are on the other side of the equation, you have the same number of books that are telling you that you need to be agile. Probably to answer your question, best thing to do is to have mentor, to make sure that you, like for example, an entrepreneur or a senior executive, but also a person working in product, a product manager. Product manager are extremely important for the success of a value proposition. They always, one of the key uh, function, one of the key objective of a product manager is to validate continuously product market fit. See, sometimes there is this belief that you reach product market fit, and at that point, done. For the next 20 years, you can push that product.
Right.
Maybe, maybe if we go back in time and you presented this statement to the senior executive at Nokia, they will tell you that that was not really a reasonable and safe assumption, right? Having confirmed and reached product market fit, and stay relaxed, for the following years. So it's a matter of establishing at every level a set of like a dashboard with indicators that helps you in a as objective as possible, as neutral as possible. And sometimes neutrality can come in a form of a brutal comment. Okay, so we have to be willing to take this conversation, going to a conference, maybe a conference that is not in your field, visiting adjacent conferences. Okay, and try to describe what you're doing with people, or and try to ask feedback. So it's a time-consuming exercise, but I do this often with my wife to be completely often. I use my
Yeah,
wife with new ideas,
yeah,
and she helps me because
yeah.
maybe she doesn't understand the nuances of the industry where I am, and she goes straight to the substance of why a customer should be willing to spend his own money for the solution that I'm presenting. So, so ultimately, trying to have uh, tools and even more important people that maybe outside of your own company, they can provide you some advice. And so spending time in building this network of mentors or circumstances that helps this refresh of your beliefs for sure is not a wasting your time. It's essential. The difficult is that it takes time, and time is the most scarce resource we have.
This is so true. And you really tapped into gold with what you said about the underlying assumptions because it's really easy to, I think, approach our discussion of our company's value and what is our value proposition for the marketplace. I think it's very easy to approach that thinking that we are objective, thinking that we are open to data, and thinking that we've got spreadsheets that tell us stuff, therefore we're going to be objective. And yet there are certain underlying assumptions that we might be taking for granted and therefore not challenging. And I'm thinking of some of this instances I've seen where we assume something will have value for the marketplace because it has value for us. And it's not it's not a given. And I love your idea of looking for mentors and input from adjacent areas, not necessarily from closely within, and yet also within the product manager. Brilliant, brilliant place of input with that. And I also want to go back to something that you said. You brought up something, a challenge that I think a lot of leaders face, which is how do we persistently pursue our goal without giving up on it and yet also stay agile? And that's really hard. That's a hard balance, because there's a lot that goes into that. I love that observation that you make because, like you said, there's just as many books telling you to stick with something as there is telling you be agile, change quickly. And so, and I think you already kind of tapped into this, but I just want to double click on that. What are the things that you would say fix these in place and be very careful changing them versus be willing to change these things in order to remain agile? Do you ever see things that kind of consistently fall into one bucket or another, in terms of running the company assets, whether it's people or ideas or anything?
Eh, so finding macro trend or typical behaviors that ultimately falls in bucket A or bucket B is not easy. I don't. I think this is obvious. However, I think that if somebody, if an organization has as a mission something that is disruptive of an industry, it goes without saying that you have to be extremely persistent because there are in the search for a balance between persistency and to be agile. Clearly, if you want to disrupt, for example, air transportation, don't expect that the current manufacturing company, how they build a plane that is exactly as it was 60 years ago, right? The way
Right.
that we are ordering a plane takes the same time, probably even more now because of people are taking more luggage in the cab.
Yes.
It takes
Yes.
more time. So boarding and deboarding, it has become less efficient than probably 50 years ago. So if you are aware that you are disrupting disrupting something, you need to be willing to accept a higher underlying risks. That means that if you succeed, for sure you need to be stubborn, you need to be more insistent, and of course there is a high reward coming after that. And so if you want to disrupt, but to accommodate some market signal from the current environment, probably you will fail. You will fail because you will just water down your initial idea. Differently, if so, here we come to the uh, honest observation of what somebody's trying to do, right? Differently, if you try to be opportunistic, and there is nothing wrong in business being opportunistic, okay, trying to do something cheaper, faster, and better, marginally, and you're trying to enter into a market, taking advantage. Like now there is this enormous effort and opportunities also to introduce AI agent.
Right.
So it it I think that we may say that identifying now what will be the successful AI agent and the segment in the industry that will become the equivalent of Google in 2030s is challenging. So probably there is a case for being more opportunistic in the exploration of AI agent, making sure that you're not building architecture and business that you do not know at the beginning of this revolution with the AI and the AI agent, that you don't know exactly if the technology can support that idea or eventually if the technology can give you much more than what you are thinking your agent can do. And so your agent will become obsolete very quickly. So maybe this can be, a thesis for a much more agile approach, right?
Yeah.
Where you try to be as fast as possible entering the market and establishing a number of users that give you a critical mass. That will not guarantee you your sustainability and the fact that your company will be alive 5 years from now because it's so rapidly changing.
Right.
But I think that some of these consideration may help to avoid some blind spot.
I love that. I'm taking notes as you write because it's just a lot coming. This is gold. Thank you. And I'm so glad you brought up the AI point because that was actually going to be my next question was I'm observing a lot of companies who they want to be agile. The leaders are looking at the landscape saying all of our competitors are adopting AI. We need to do the same thing. And so they're trying to be agile, which is smart because it's here to stay. But there are a lot of possible um, gaps, a lot of potential gaps. And, how do you prioritize, what to do when you are looking at how to stay agile, let's say in 4 different areas at once? I mean, that's a lot. And I'm going back to something that my dad and I have talked about a lot. My dad was the one who founded our company 40 years ago. And when it comes to, we call it differentiating value. Like, what is it that sets you apart in the marketplace and it has value for your prospective clients? That's not an easy thing to necessarily get the answer to. And one of the things that we find is that executives start working with us. And oftentimes when we ask them, tell us about your value prop, tell us about your differentiating value, they will start telling us about how awesome they are, the company, how great their solution is, how much better it is than their competitors. And they're very focused on the solution. But what they don't realize is how much gold is embedded in their business itself. And we have seen companies underestimate how much value is actually woven into their business model, how they do what they do. Like, your competitor might offer this also, but the way you do it is better and there's value embedded in there. But unless the company leaders, the humans running it, understand what that value is and what's driving it, that I should say what that differentiation is and what's driving it, they can inadvertently overlook it, change it. And that's kind of that fundamental where some of their fundamental value comes from in the marketplace. And so I'm listening to you talk about the agility piece and AI and adopting new things. And I'm also thinking in terms of when you've got really good differentiating value embedded in your business model, how you do what you do, how you deliver what you deliver, there may be that may help kind of uncover what do we do in our business model that we need to protect. And I'm thinking in some of the industries that we work in, having human agents is going to be a competitive advantage very soon. Because if people have had enough of the AI for a while, being the human might actually be where the next competitive advantage lies if everybody else has adopted AI in your landscape and done it poorly. So I'm loving your observations here, and especially about the part about being a disruptor. And this can take time. And I thought that was brilliant. So thank you. I have to I have to narrow this down. You got the juices flowing here. I know I have to land the plane. You were using aviation a minute ago. What would you say to an executive who is looking to grow their company and doesn't want to lose sight of where their most valuable piece of their value prop is? What advice would you give if you could tell a CEO one thing to take away from this about protecting the real value in their value prop over the next 12 months of heavy growth? What would you tell them?
If we observe the ultimate reason why a customer pays for a specific product or solution, those ultimate reasons are not many.
Right.
The
Wow.
cu- customers, particularly in a world where starting 25 years ago with the internet, options, description of features of product is not an impediment anymore. It's not that you buy a car because for proximity you had that dealership nearby to your house. And so at that point, your family went to buy that car there. And so your son will buy that car there. It happened 40,
Sure.
50 years ago, right? Because that was a good brand and you continue. Now we have an unlimited possibility to observe and to judge product. So there are plenty of study that indicates that is not abundance of features or uh, assumption on delivered value that increase the value of a company. And I'm not talking about revenues here. I'm talking
Okay.
about value of a company,
Okay.
intrinsic value of the company. So if I may provide an advice is to stay very, very, very close to the recognition and remembering what are the ultimate reason why a customer choose that company. And because that has a series of positive repercussion in the way to think and the way to lead an organization. Sometimes uh, adding features, adding channels, adding um, um, yes, other opportunities may dilute the reason why a customer ultimately wants to buy a product. So um, you may have people that have a different opinion, but if I have to give a recommendation is nurture the ultimate reason why a customer is picking you. And if you realize that reason is becoming weak, quickly try to figure it out why and to find another feature, another solution that the customer will love. Because otherwise, just a matter of time, somebody will replace you.
Oh, that's true. That's so true. We always tell our customers that your best client is already listed on your competitor's forecast the
Yeah,
moment you sign that contract.
yeah.
They just got listed on a competitor's forecast. You've got to protect that. You've got to protect that and listen. And oh my goodness. On that bombshell, Thank you. I could ask you a million more questions. This is incredible. Your insights are so rich in this, and you've clearly spent time in the trenches also on the commercial side. So you have seen things, and I deeply appreciate the insight that you are bringing here. So thank you, Marco. Thank you. This has been a privilege to have you on the show. Thank you. Oh, listeners, is there, before I wrap it up, is there anything that you want to make sure that I haven't asked that you want to make sure I ask, or did I max out with the questions I asked?
I believe it was a nice journey around
Okay.
the the importance of the value proposition is terminology that everybody is familiar with. But when you ask uh, around the company, tell me what is our value proposition, not very often you have a large number of people that are, number one, agree on the sentence. Number two, they are able to, let's say, properly or in simple terms address the the description of the value proposition, describing what we deliver to a customer and why the customer pick us instead of somebody else. So, and this is not due because there is a lack of attention in what we are doing, just because the dynamic in an organization have the tendency to create some different departments, silos, and so the common view, the ultimate view, represented by the customer, may be lost. So I think it's such an important starting point, starting with the value proposition. And I think we have been able to look a little bit around different perspective at how the value proposition can impact, or how the CEO or a leadership of a company, the other way around. Uh, we discussed briefly also the role of AI. I think that it's a very well and very often discussed topic, AI. I think that organization have just started to think about how to use AI. There is clearly uh, an opportunity to use AI to increase productivity, and uh, that is happening, I think, real time across uh, hundreds of organizations that are, in addition to just using the typical um, AI tool, ChatGPT, etc., they are also trying to identify um, key process that can be supported by AI agent that ultimately increase the productivity, or they can reveal with the collection of all these data models, underlying models of the behavior of the customer or behavior of an infrastructure that before, just because some industry are quite labor intensive in terms of analysis of the data, relying still on the opinion of a human operator to evaluate if a project, if a solution is valuable or is not valuable. Try to imagine that the IP industry,
Hmm.
how, has been heavily influenced by the opinion of the IP expert, and how that industry can, I don't want to say, I don't want to say disrupted, but for sure it's going to change.
Yes.
And on the other side, it's in front of us every day that you have people trying to use AI disrupting what the companies are doing from inside, and that can be an opportunity, but can be also a risk. That instead of thinking about how AI helps my value proposition, this one approach, you may have a misuse of AI, just trying to add things that are not relevant to
Right.
customer, just for the falling in love, with this amazing technology that can answer a lot of questions, but maybe the customer is not going to buy that headphone because a feature of AI that is irrelevant, right?
Yes. Yes. Oh my goodness. I had a client tell me once something that ties in so much with what you just said. And he said, Microsoft Outlook probably has thousands of features. I care about two: Outlook, calendar, and email. That's it. I do not care about anything else. And if they try to roll out stuff and change what I'm doing, and it just, I care about two features, not the other thousand. And I thought that was a very good perspective. And don't mess with the two
Yeah.
that are
Yeah, yeah.
actually of value.
And probably 99% of the user of Outlook, I mean, the majority of the users of Outlook, they have the same opinion.
Yes, yes.
You may have at least 1 or 2% of people that they care about also the other features. So it's up to you. Do you want to serve the 2% or do you want to serve the 98%?
Right, exactly. Oh my goodness. And what you said was so brilliant about for leaders, and about the fact that there isn't always consensus in the company of what exactly is the value prop. So my challenge for the CEOs listening is this week, ask your team. Just pop in. What's our value prop? Because you may be surprised how much variety you get in your answers. What do we actually do here? Brace yourself.
Only do that. It can be a surprising response. Yeah.
Yes, it can, but a very enlightening exercise as well. So, oh, Marco, thank you so much. I have deeply appreciated your time here. It's been a joy to have you on, and we appreciate your insights so much. Thank you. And to those of us to those who are listening, please stay tuned. We'll have more insights for you. But this has been an absolute delight. Marco, thank you. And we'll be back next time on Revenue Unscripted.
Thank you for having me. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you.